بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. I praise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I ask Him Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to send countless blessings and salutations upon the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us sincere and noble intentions. And when we mention the intention, it is extremely important in all of our matters. And our intention for why we do things is extremely important. It is what the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam related. Imam al-Bukhari mentioned it as the first hadith that he mentioned in his Sahih. That the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, what means that the actions are by the intentions. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And that every person will have what they intended. So it is important that we make noble intentions all the time for everything we do, everything we say. Even for the states that we develop, we should have an intention, a noble intention. And they can be summarized to 4 basic objectives from those intentions. The first is seeking proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking at-taqarrub ilallah, to have a higher status and rank with Allah tabarak wa ta'ala by the actions we do. That's number one. So every time we engage in something, how is this going to bring me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my rank and status with Him? Is it going to elevate me to a state that Allah accepts from me? We should keep that in mind while we're engaging. The second intention is to earn the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives for that specific action. Because not only do we do deeds or say sayings, but those deeds and sayings are rewardable. So we shouldn't just take that for granted. We should intend to seek that reward, right? Seeking the thawab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's attached to those deeds. So we making the intention to draw close to Allah Not only that, seeking the reward that Allah gives for that. And the one who has that intention to seek the reward is also conscious of the day of judgment. Because on the day of judgment, it's either going to be al-thawab or al-adab. It's going to be reward or punishment. So if we intend to seek reward, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the day of judgment, we're going to find ourselves as winners. The third thing is to seek the pleasure and acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I say the pleasure, I mean the acceptance of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Because we can do deeds, that doesn't mean that Allah is going to accept them from us, even if they're done in a valid way. That's out of His generosity that He accepts from us, because there is nothing that is obligatory on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do for the slaves. Rather, every endowment that He gives us is out of His generosity. كُلُّ نِعْمَةٍ مِّنْهُ فَضْلٌ. Every endowment from Him is due to His generosity. So we intend to seek the acceptance of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, the rida, the ridwan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fourth thing is ultimately we seek Allah, ma'rifatullah, that divine realization of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala through our statements and through our deeds. They lead to a realization when they're done properly. This is something that the pious among the nation of Sayyidina Muhammad encouraged in terms of formulating noble intentions. So when we say, may Allah grant us the ability to make noble intentions, then this means we want these things, these four matters. We want drawing close to Allah. We want to intend the reward of seeking the reward of Allah, seeking the acceptance of Allah, and ultimately seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having ma'rifah. And these are steps, because every time you make a noble intention, a righteous intention, it is a means for opening the doors of divine success. Abwab al-tawfiq. To the extent those scholars mention that the one who formulates a pious intention, that will be a means for opening 70 doors of at-tawfiq, 70 doors of divine success. You know, over the last 4 to 5 years, we've intended to do a lot of teaching in terms that you're learning the correct creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, you're learning the practice, and even some indications to the inward aspects of this. But you notice I took the last week off before the Eid because I was thinking, what is best for us? Oftentimes we just do things thinking without really thinking about them, thinking that these are good things to do, but not really having contemplation on the actual end result of what you're doing. So I thought to myself, I said, change your format. Change what you're doing. Sometimes abundance is not the most useful thing. So we're given a lot of information, a lot of things, and that's good. But how useful is it, right? The Prophet ﷺ didn't pray for necessarily an abundance of knowledge. He asked for beneficial knowledge. Al-ilm al-nafi', beneficial knowledge. So even if you only have a little bit of knowledge, if it is a knowledge that leads to implementation and realization, then that's beneficial knowledge. But if you have a lot of knowledge, even if it's correct knowledge, but it doesn't lead to implementation, you practicing it, and that practicing doesn't lead to realization, which is what, to have that, realize that this affair is about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not about you. There's a higher purpose for everything we're doing. And sometimes we don't hit the mark. We worry about the wrong things. A little bit too much, we worry about the wrong things. Really, it's about becoming, and we talk about it, but we need to move beyond talking about it, actually realizing it. How do I become? What am I doing with everything I'm learning? Am I becoming a better Muslim, a better follower of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, a better human being? So these are all things we can make, in addition to those four primary things I mentioned. We can make intentions that when we learn, that we also intending to become, right? You're intending to become. We have quantity, but what's the level of the quality? And each and every one of us should look into ourselves. Yes, I'm doing a lot, but what is the quality of what I'm doing? I'm speaking a lot, but what is the quality of what I'm speaking? And is it going to lead to the ultimate objective of as-sa'adatul abadiyya, everlasting felicity? At the end of the day, that's what we want, right? We want that we would have everlasting dwelling in Al-Jannah, in the paradise, and be recipients of what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam described in the Hadith Qudsi, when he said, what means that Allah tabarak wa ta'ala said, I have prepared for my righteous servants what no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, and no heart of the human being has ever felt. Subhanallah. That's what we should be looking for. That's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam quoting from his Lord tabaraka wa ta'ala, that what kind of servant's going to get that reward? The righteous servant, the pious servant. So that's something we need to become, right? I have prepared for my pious servants, ibadiyya salihin, my pious servants. That's a state. And in order to be that, there is intentions, there is aspirations, there is statements, there is actions, there is states, there are stations. All that is a part of becoming among the pious servants of Allah, the righteous servants of Allah. All of those things are a part of that. What I intend, what I aspire to be, what I say, what I do, my state, the stations I reach, all of that is a part of it. And each of us need to realize that our own particular situation is special for us. And sometimes we need to stop looking at other people's plate and concentrate what is in front of us on our plate. I see you, but what about me? How do I become? And I may not become the same way you become. It may look different. Your route may not be my route. Because the paths to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the knowers of Allah explain, they are as numerous as the breaths of the creation. Wow. The paths that lead to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are as numerous as the breaths of the creation. So everybody has a different route, even if we share in some aspects. But there is this special relationship with every servant with his Lord that no one shares in. No one shares with you. That's something Allah gave you. And you need to value that gift and show your gratitude by actually becoming what Allah willed for you and discovering that. But the only way you discover that is by continuous striving, continuous effort and work and high aspirations till you become who Allah wanted you to be. And you would notice the pious people, they always considered themselves falling short of this, like becoming who they are to become. That's something we should emulate, to realize, hey, I'm not reaching my capacity. I still have levels to climb. And becoming that pious servant, that special worshiper that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala willed for me to be. So formulate your good intentions. Make them. I wanted to give in addition to that. So that's one advice. And I'm talking to myself before I'm talking to you, because we all need to be reminded. And sometimes, since we know ourselves well, we should be the best advisors to ourselves, because we know ourselves. We know what is hidden from everyone else. You know? So sometimes we should talk to ourselves and give ourselves advice, even if in the process we're advising others. So we make the intention to advise myself and others. And inshallah, if it is sincere, that will be a means for us of elevation and raising our status and rank. But I want to give you, in terms of seeking knowledge, because that's a means to all that we mention. So seeking knowledge is important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran, وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, and say, my Lord, increase me in knowledge. So every day for us, we should be in the status of seeking knowledge and an increase in knowledge. Every day you need to learn something that is going to benefit you in the hereafter. And you use it in this world as well. So here, let's just look at it from the side of religious knowledge, al-ilm al-shar'i, sacred knowledge. Every day, make sure you learn more, even if it's one thing. And every day, make sure you practice something you've learned. So that's another way to make sure you learn beneficial knowledge, because while you're intending to learn something, you're also intending to implement what you learn. So you need it to be practical, either outwardly or inwardly. So you're learning and you're implementing at the same time. As it is mentioned, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ لِلْعَمَلِ, that knowledge is only for practice. So you have an increase every day in knowledge. And we do this on this platform. Every day we learn something. You know, we increase. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to continue. I make that a habit for myself, and I encourage you to do it. No day goes by that I don't learn. No day. I make it my habit. Every day I learn something new. I push myself every day. And I advise you to do it. And surround yourself with those who will push you. So either you have a teacher who's constantly pushing you to learn and to acquire, to learn and to acquire, right? You have a teacher. Or you have a companion, a friend that is constantly pushing you, right? You have someone that y'all like a constant motivation for each other. What did you learn today? What did you study today? What are you reading? What are you doing? And we like that, we push each other. And if you can combine both, that's even great. You have the teacher that you are always connected to them and listening to them and taking advice from them, right? And you have a companion who's doing the same thing, but y'all together on it. This is even better. So you combine both things. And if you have it like that, you'll find that you'll increase your knowledge. And this is a benefit. So that's the increase in knowledge. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم." That seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. So we must learn. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah told us to seek and increase, and the Prophet said it's obligatory to seek knowledge and learn. And if you keep seeking, you're going to be increased. In that, there are 5 things that will help you. I want to give you those 5 things, and I'll stop after that. One second. So 5 things will help you with this. So write them, inshallah, and I'll stop after that. Number 1, studying. Number 1, studying. you need to study. And studying entails taking what you learn and trying to have it rooted in your heart and in your mind, right? Study. It also has memorizing, right? That's part of studying. You memorizing books, memorizing lessons, you know, put something in your mind. Knowledge is what is in the heart, not in the pages of books. So you need to be able to preserve your knowledge. So you study, you take some time, you review, you memorize, right? You repeat. That's all a part of studying. So that's the first thing. Make sure you study. Every day you study. I know we're busy. I know our life, we have a lot of things going on, but make some time to study your deen, right? Make some time for that. It's important for your hereafter. Your whole matter can't be the world. You have to study. And you're going to study until you die. Because studying is a part of worshiping. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala told us in the Quran, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينُ. Worship your Lord until death comes. So studying is a part of that. So you're going to study till you die. It's never going to stop. So don't get tired of studying. When you die, that's the end of your study time, right? And make some time for yourself, right? To study, especially when you're home, right? That's one. So studying is important. Number two, reading. Reading and studying is not the same thing. Studying is a little bit more intense. Reading, it can be intense and it could be less intense. It could be very active or it could be passive, but abundant reading. Go nowhere, make it a habit. Don't go anywhere without a book. This will help you with reading. Never travel, never move, never go anywhere except that you have a beneficial book that you're reading. Make it a habit. You're always reading in books. So whatever you're studying, say this is your study book. You're studying Aqidah or Fiqh or Hadith or whatever you're studying in. This is the text you're studying. Then on the side, you should have reading in that subject in more details. Even if the reading is passive, you're just reading through to have a overview of a subject, right? So you're reading. But you're actively studying in whatever particular thing you're doing. But the reading is supplemental, but you should have abundant of it. And preferably in different subjects about the deen that you read, and you complete book after book after book after book. One of the things that our teachers advised us was like, in any subject, if you haven't read 3 books on it, you know nothing about that subject. And they said those 3 books should be a beginner's level book, an intermediate level book, and an advanced book. And if you haven't read in anything you're studying, any topic, any subject, any science, at least 3 books at those levels you haven't read and you don't understand the subject. We're talking about just reading. I'm not talking about just studying part, but reading. You should have an abundant amount of reading. And let me tell you the secret about reading. If you read enough, is going to expand your viewpoints. You're going to be able to see that this deen is wide, not narrow. And that's a benefit, especially for us. Whenever you see someone tell you don't read a book, know that's your enemy. I want you to keep that in mind. Whenever you hear someone tell you don't read books, he's your enemy or she's your enemy. Don't trust them. Do not trust such people. They're trying to control you. Does that mean read anything? No. We said that you should have a teacher and you should have a companion and you should have a methodology of studying. And within that, you should have abundant reading. So I'm not saying be all over the place. No, I'm not saying that. But you must read. And you need to have an abundant reading. The one who doesn't read will eventually find themselves subjugated and disappointed whenever they wake up. Because while you're not reading, you're sleeping. So while you're sleeping, someone is working on your subjugation and enslavement. And when you wake up, you're going to be disappointed. Make sure you read. Make sure you do abundant reading. Now, what to read? That may be a discussion with your teachers and with your companions, but make sure you're reading. Is this point clear? This has killed us not reading. It's hurt us bad as a people. Make sure you read. I remember my 5th grade teacher. That woman was amazing. Not religious, not Muslim teacher, regular African American school teacher in the 5th grade. She died recently. She was such a wonderful, amazing woman. But one thing she encouraged in her students was abundant reading. When I was in the 5th grade, I was reading on a 9th grade level in the 5th grade. She was amazing, right? We had this curriculum of books that, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. In the 5th grade, we went from the 5th grade reading level to the 9th grade reading level. I think it was like 3 of us, 3 students, right? And they was telling her, you got to slow them down. They're passing all the students. And she was like, no, I'm not slowing them down. I'm going to push them, if anything. And she had an amazing way. This woman was amazing. If we finished a book, this is the whole curriculum for the school year. We was finished those books and reading like 4 levels in the school year. Every time you finish the book for that level, that grade level, she would treat us to your own whole pizza in this restaurant that was famous in Atlantic City in those days. It's like a small personal pizza, but people, we couldn't afford that stuff. We was poor. But she would take her money, and every time you finish your book, she would take you as a celebration to that restaurant and sit down and give you your own pizza. That stuff, and I don't even know how many years that would have been. Maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. But it sticks in my mind. And we made that restaurant. So she would take us all. If we finished together, she would take us all. If one finished before the other, she'll take that one. And to this day, every time I read a lot. If anyone knows me, my biggest possession is books. I don't have anything more than I have books. If I have to move, I can move my whole house before I move my books. That's how much I read. And she gave us that energy, right? Our teachers used to say, whoever taught you a letter, you owe them gratitude. So imagine how much gratitude. He said, even your like second, secular teacher, teach you regular reading and math, whoever taught you a letter, you owe them. And mashallah, she taught us so many letters. But she made us readers, right? Love reading. And one of the great scholars, Al Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al Habashi, he was the Khalifa, the successor of Imam al Haddad, radiallahu ta'ala. At the end of his life, he made a statement. He said, I find nothing more enjoyable in life than reading beneficial books. Subhanallah. Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al Habashi, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He said, I find nothing more enjoyable in life than reading beneficial books. And those great scholars, many of them breathed their last with a book on their chest. Reading a book, they died like that, reading beneficial books. Reading themselves, reading on their teachers, reading with their companions, reading. And that was Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al Habashi. He spent 40 years with Imam al Haddad, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, 40 years. And in 40 years, he read 70 books. When I say 70 books, they're not just one volume books. Some of those books were 10 volumes, 15 volumes. So hundreds of books, hundreds he read with his teacher, let alone what he read by himself. Hundreds. And from all that reading, he used to just sit with his students, his companions, his students, and just dictate things that would come to him. But a lot of it, inspiration, but also just from a lot of reading. He has a book, it's not published, it's in manuscript, called As-Safinatul Kubra. It is around 20 volumes. But it's not published book. It's handwritten manuscript. That shows you what it was. And it's just from all of his reading, all kinds of sciences, he's just talking about them. Just mention it. And sometimes when I read in that book, in that manuscript, I'm like, this man was an ocean, right? An ocean. Some of the stuff he's talking about in there, you're like, whoosh. But that's abundant reading. And every teacher he would go with, they read. And a lot of times, it's not details. It's not like active, engaging, studying. No, just reading the text, right? Just reading books. Finish. Another book. Finish, right? There's a great benefit in that. One of the great scholars, he said, my reading was so much that rarely did I see someone do something that I couldn't find an opinion of a scholar who mentioned it. Subhanallah. He said, my reading was so wide that rarely that I see someone doing something that I couldn't find a statement or an opinion of a scholar that permitted that. So I knew from abundant reading the various difference of opinions and issues that average people wouldn't know because I read so much, right? And when you read a lot, you won't become narrow minded. Even if you disagree, you'll realize it may have a point there. I don't agree with it, but it has a basis, right? That comes from abundant reading. So there's a benefit in it. And keep in mind, the one who tell you don't read is not your friend. Now, someone might tell you what to be careful of reading. That's a different story. But to tell you don't read, just listen to me, get away from that person. Because that person's reading. While they're telling you not read, they're reading. They're doing abundant reading and then not telling you to read. That's why you notice on this thing we read books, we read books, we read books. And I'm getting back to that. We're going to be reading more, inshallah ta'ala. But we finished a lot of stuff. Why? Some of it, for studying, and others just to expand your mind, right? Just to expand your mind. We have much more capacity than we think we have. And reading helps expand that capacity. So, studying, reading. Number 3, the third thing, teaching. Teaching. When you learn and study and you read, you should teach when you're able. What you understand well, share it with others. You don't have to be the sheikh. You can be teaching your family. You can teach your friends. You can teach your companions. You can teach those who you have influence over. Everyone has someone they can share with. So if you don't like the term teaching, just say sharing. If it makes you feel better, share what you've learned. Increase people's knowledge. Make sure you understand it well, because you got the teacher, you got your companions, you're reviewing, you're checking. So you should understand well. Now convey. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Convey from me, even if it's one thing, one saying. Convey it. Imam al-Haddad mentioned that in a beautiful way, rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, whoever knows one religious judgment, he's a learned person in that. And what that entails is that you have to convey it. Whoever knows one religious ruling, judgment, he's learned in that. That means you have to convey it, right? I'm not saying convey what you don't know, but what you know, convey it. Right? So, teaching. And there's a such thing as, if we learn well and we teach and we convey to our families, that's preservation of knowledge. You know, that's a preservation of knowledge. The more people learn, the more beneficial it is, right? And we should want people to know. That's the way we can build our communities. We got knowledgeable people, right? So that reading, sometimes if you just read and read and read and read and read, eventually you're going to understand, right? So by studying and reading, then you'll be able to convey some things. I remember in the university, um, I used to just have like the book of assistance and another book in fiqh, and I would just read and memorize, read and memorize, read and memorize. And my intention was that if they ever transfer me, wherever I go, I can teach the knowledge because it's preserved. I don't need no books. And I'll tell you a story, stories from the cell. I was in this institution, upstate New York, the feds. And we used to walk around the yard, right? In groups, like groups of, I think four, no more than four people. And we would walk and teach while we're walking around the yard. So like we would have a group, this little group and another group, and we would assign a brother, you teach this group, and we would just walk around the yard and teach lessons, fiqh, aqidah, some tasawwuf, right? Especially for the ayn knowledge, right? No books, just you got this subject, you got this subject, go, talk, 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 right? And so I got put in solitary confinement for like 6 months, right? It's an amazing story. It's the benefit of this. The story why, don't worry about that. It's neither here nor there. I was there, right? Uh, so this Jamaican brother, he had got in a fight and he was locked down, non-Muslim. And when they locked me up, they put me in a cell with him. So we were bunkies in the hole, they call it the hole. So we in the hole together. You don't have nothing in the hole, especially there. Like it's just they didn't give you no books. No, you can't have all that. You know, wooden pencils and papers, a mess, right? So while I'm in the hole, I would just be reviewing, and I take the pencil and paper and write everything out, right? And every now and then they would bring a cart with like novels and nonsense, right? And he would get the novel. He was a smart kid. He would, no, he wasn't a kid, he was an adult, but younger guy. He would take the novels and he would be reading novels, but he would watch me and I'm not reading no books or those books. I'm writing out books on paper, right? And he said, "What the heck are you doing? I always hear you reviewing and repeating." I said, "The knowledge of the religion." He was so fascinated by that. He said, "Can you teach me?" I said, "MashaAllah." He said, "I want to learn. I never seen nothing like that." He was with me for like about 6 months, maybe 5.5 months. He left before me. Uh, he was fascinated by it. So I started to teach him, and he took Shahada and learned his obligatory knowledge, which are like a book. He learned it in those 5 months sitting there, and we had no books. He learned all the rules. I was younger then, so my mind was much different. I'm older now, and I can't remember like that no more. But that was a benefit of that. So even in that thing, because we were studying and reading and memorizing, when we didn't have anything, we could still teach. And everywhere you would get moved, you would just begin teaching because the stuff was already there. We still need that now. Even though we're not in those environments, we still need that same process right out here, right? And when I look back in those days, we did a lot of da'wah. A lot of people became Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah that wouldn't have had it had we not had that methodology in our habit, you know. So do it, right? You never know when you're going to need it. And now that you're in this environment, you keep your books, read, review, and review, and review, and review. So that's the third thing, teaching. That's going to help you preserve your knowledge when you convey it. And it'll help you increase because you're going to run out, right? You got to keep adding to it to keep teaching. And you should be able to do that from your mind, right? You should be able to just go and teach the religion. Go, 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 go. You shouldn't run out of gas. Because if you're learning every day and you're increasing knowledge every day, you're studying, you're reading, and you're teaching, it'll grow. It'll grow. It's the nature of it. It'll grow. With a sincere intention, it'll grow. Inshallah ta'ala. The fourth thing, writing. As I mentioned, the more you write, the knowledge that you're studying, you're reading, and you're teaching will become instilled in you. You got to write it. The pen, actually physical moving of the pen, the eyes and everything have its work in that. It'll help the mind. So write, 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 write. Make sure you write every day. Even if it's one page, write, right? Write one page. And maybe you can't do a page, a paragraph. Write something of the knowledge that you learn from your mind. Don't look at nothing else. Just write it out, right? When you're preparing to write a book, they just tell you just write. Don't think, don't do nothing. Just write, 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 write. You're going to go back and you're going to review it. You're going to check it. You're going to edit it. But for right now, just get in the habit of writing. Just write out stuff, right? Even if it's scattered all over the place, don't worry about it. Just write it out. Find something you're going to talk about among and just write. Scattered writings. Just write. Just write. Get in the habit. Have you a notebook and just every day write in that book till it's filled up. There's your book. You just wrote a book. Every day, just write something. And the next day, continue. Just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Then when you finish, you have a book. Now you go edit it, take it out, move it, and just get in the habit. But every day you write something beneficial. And then you got your friend, you got your teacher, read it to him, right? Right? So read them. No, look what I wrote down. Check this out and read it. Oh, then sometimes you have a conversation. And when you have that conversation, it's going to expand it. Then write that down, right? Some people call it journaling, right? But write about deen, only about Islam, about the religion, about the Islamic sciences, right? It's still the same concept, right? Right, 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 right. One of the scholars, I think it was a Zarkashi, rahimullah, if I remember correctly, uh, he was poor. So what he used to do, he was poor. I think it was a Zarkashi. Yeah, he was poor. Rahimahullah rahmatan wasiya. So he couldn't afford books. He used to go to the booksellers and like read a book, like he's looking at the book before he buy. He would read a few pages and memorize it, and then run home and write out the book. Then come back another day, read some more of that book, and then write it out. To actually, he wrote entire books like that. That's how he got his copy of the book. He would go read some, come back, write some, read some, come back, write some, till he had his own book, his own edition. So this is, a beneficial thing. And then the fifth thing is answering questions, asking and answering questions. So sometimes when you're reviewing and you're talking about all these processes you took, questions going to come up. You got to get answers for them. Some you answer, some you ask. So from your studying, from your reading, from your teaching, from your writing, questions are going to develop. So you just having questions and answers, and they're beneficial to preserving knowledge. Because you have a whole bunch of stuff that questions are going to come up and they need answers. So questions and answers. That's the fifth thing. If you do all these 5 things, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala, you will increase in knowledge. That we started with. The verse, وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, طَالِبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيدَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ Muslim. Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. If you do all this stuff, inshallah, you're going to increase in knowledge and you're going to fulfill the obligation of learning and seeking knowledge. So get those 5 things. Studying, reading, studying, reading, teaching, writing, answering questions and answers. 5. Studying, reading, teaching, writing, questions and answers, right? Sometimes you're asking questions, sometimes you're giving answers. Questions and answers. All of these 5 things, when you combine them with the sincere intention that we mentioned, you're going to increase in knowledge. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala make this something beneficial for us, something we learn, something we all implement to our level, right? To help us become, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. We'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock, inshallah, on the Black Imams Roundtable. Don't forget to support Masjid Muhammad and all our efforts that we are doing. It's a lot of work. We always need your support and your assistance because we want to do beneficial things, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So don't forget us in your generosity, especially during these blessed days after Hajj. May Allah reward you. May Allah increase you. May Allah grant you all of the good in this world and in the hereafter. Make you a winner, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bisir Surah Al-Fatiha. Inshallah, we'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.